Oh. Did anybody else hear her say this meeting is being recorded?
I heard it.
Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard that.
I haven't heard that either. Usually it's kind of a covert thing you do in Zoom and nobody knows unless they see the button on.
Wonder if that's a new feature.
So yeah, someone must have complained.
Oh, how long do you want me to, is it 15 or 20 minutes to speak?
20 to 25. So if you go 20, we'll be good.
Okay.
I'm sure that it'll be so packed with meaning that, if it's 15, it'll be amazing. Just do your thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, really, I'm sure. It's true.
Well, I have my watch next to me here, so.
All right. Anytime.
Ready to go?
Anytime everyone's ready.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to be together on this beautiful Sunday at Unity of Grand Rapids, a positive spiritual community centered in God. Please make sure to take a moment to mute your device so that the background noise is limited during our service. Be sure to check out and subscribe on our UGR sites online. This is a wonderful way to stay connected to what's happening in our spiritual community. We would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone, including any guests here today for the first time. We welcome any questions you have about our church, and you can reach us through the church office. We at Unity of Grand Rapids believe that God is everywhere present, meaning that God's presence is in each of us. Through prayer and meditation, we remember our connection to God and are thus able to live the truth and goodness we know and which we are in the world. I am pleased to welcome our guest speaker today, Reverend Richard Brendan. Richard Brendan has served as a hospice chaplain for 17 years, a life purpose coach for 24 years, and a weekly radio host for 19 years. Richard, could you please lead us in prayer this morning?
Yeah, sure will. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Divine, we thank you so much for the beauty of this day and the gift of this day. And we thank you mostly for the gift of breath, knowing that there are those out there who are struggling with every breath. So we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to enter this day with courage and love. We're grateful for this opportunity that we have to join together through the vibration of waves and Zoom in different cities and towns coming together to also have worship and celebration. So I pray that today that we just continue to fall in love with all that is. Help us see that all is holy. Help us see with a loving heart. Let us see God in all things. And so God, for today, help us to become masters of ourselves, that we might be servants to others. So take our minds and think through them. Take our lips and speak through them. And take our hearts and set them on fire. Amen.
Amen.
God's
Let us affirm together our statement of faith. There is only one presence
Presence,
and one power
power,
in me and in the universe,
first,
God, the good, omnipotent.
impotent.
And now let's say it using the word as in place of in. There is only one presence and one power as me and as the universe, God, the good, omnipotent.
Hmm.
Today's daily word is faith. My faith keeps me focused on God. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Luke chapter 17, verse 6. I may not be able to control what happens around me, but I am always free to choose what happens within me. I choose to see the vibrant wholeness that is present even during illness. I open my heart and my mind to the harmony that I know is possible, even in the midst of apparent discord. When my needs appear greater than my resources, I remind myself all supply springs forth from the inexhaustible well of divine substance. I am reassured by remembering all situations are temporary and God is greater than every circumstance. Through my faith, I align my thoughts with the divine and believe in this truth that sets me free. My faith keeps me focused on God. Now, as we enter a time of meditation, please get comfortable and find your center. Richard, could you please lead us in meditation?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so right now, let's just all get in a comfortable place, letting go of any cares and concerns that we might have had, or busy mornings we might have had already leading up to this moment. And let's do that by taking a few deep in breaths on a 3 count, holding that breath for 2 or 3 count, and then exhaling on a 2 or 3 count. Just start doing that for just a bit, feeling that rhythm of breath, letting go, inviting in, resting in love. And as we're gathered together this morning, let us truly be together. Let us pay attention to our breathing. Let us center in our bodies and in our minds. And let us go within. And now let us reflect on the source of each of us and everything in the universe. And let us remember that we're all living beings, brothers and sisters, nourished by the same source. Now let us resolve to cease being a cause of suffering to each other at work and throughout life. Now from God, let us fill our hearts with love and compassion toward each other and all living beings. And now let us resolve to live and work in a way that does not harm our planet and instead heals it. And now let us resolve to live and work in a way that harms no other living beings and instead affirms and supports them. And so with humility and the recognition of the sacredness of all life, let us pray for and practice loving kindness. Now take another deep breath, hold it in, exhale, and let's continue the flow and celebration of this morning's service.
All right, Richard, you can start your talk and I'm going to make you full screen. There we go. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I was very kind to all of you because I was mouthing the words. You did not want to hear my voice singing because I didn't know if I was on mute or not. Also, it is an honor to be with all of you here today. I look forward to the day when I can meet many of you coming up to Michigan. Michigan's one of my favorite places to go to. And probably in a month or two, I'll be up there again. Today, the topic, why awareness of death is a secret of life. You know, it's interesting. I've been somewhat of a spiritual entrepreneur most of my life. Counselor, I've been a pastor for years, taught a lot at New Thought churches. I've been a cumulative total of 17 years as a hospice chaplain, but I would do hospice for 4 years. I'd leave for 5 years. I'd come back and do hospice again because a hospice company would always call back to me. And I have to tell you that through the years on my journey, all the books I've read, I had a not-for-profit called Journeys Fire International. And I brought people like Deepak Chopra and Michael Beckwith to Indianapolis and Andrew Harvey and Julie Butterfly Hill. With all the people I've met, with all the people I've interviewed on the radio show, with the scads and scores of books I would read, I realized one day that what I learned most about life and love came from the dying patients that I served in my, what I call my quiet hospice job as chaplain. And I thought that was fascinating to me. And then as I studied death meditation through Buddhism and learning more about the power of that and how that can even rewire your brain, and little affirmations that I picked up from other people, such as, there's not a morning that goes by that before I leave the house, I have my hands like this, as if I'm not holding on to anything. And I say playfully, I could die today. Because I've learned, as many of you have, we've all lost people who we've loved, who've passed away. I've lost a lot of friends much younger than me. And I want to share with you as a prayer request, my 3-month-old granddaughter, Sloan, has cancer. which, yeah, that still shocks me because I'm around death all the time, or even cancer. But she's been going to Riley Hospital. Riley Hospital is a miracle place here in Indianapolis. And she's already had 2 surgeries and started her first chemo treatment a few days ago. Beautiful thing about a 3-month-old, she reminds me of my dog Harley. They're just present moment. You know, they don't have any past behind them to think, oh, chemo, oh my God, and all those things. So she handles it that way. And when she's not feeling well, she cries. But you see her now and she's happy. Now, they did tell my daughter that she will lose her hair because she has 23 more treatments. But it also shows me this word that is very powerful that I have learned over the years, the word impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. So I've learned to walk lightly on the earth. And so when given the opportunity this first time, I've done a lot of New Thought teachings, but I wanted to share this because I'm passionate about this message, because as I've chosen to make my own mortality my friend, as I've chosen to invite my friend death into my life and not keep it in the closet behind me, I started learning that I was living more fully and loving more deeply, and it was amazing. Sometimes I'll write little things and I'll post it on Facebook because I have a fear of writing. I love to speak, but I'm working on a book called The Art of Living in the Light of Death. And so these are little things that I'll be putting in the book. But one thought I had, I just wanted to share. Then I have a few really cool quotes because I collect these quotes and I love them. I shared this: the hospice patients I served often spoke of the simple pleasures as being the best. And first of all, I think that is so cool and so enlightening. It's always the simple pleasures. It's not all those other grandiose things that we tend to get caught up in. To listen with the heart and to be heard deeply, to touch with care and to be held with love, to notice the stars in the sky. When was the last time we did that? Or the smell of the earth beneath our feet, as I will mow the grass later today. You know, to inhale a sunrise, to dance under the full moon. That's what I learned from all these people who finally realized they don't have forever because a doctor told them so. Now, we all know we're going to die. Death is the most democratic thing on the face of the earth. It takes everybody, Democrats and Republicans. I had a libertarian who said, well, I'm not sure about the libertarians. And I said, I'm not sure about the libertarians either. But pretty much it will take everybody. But here's some quotes I've collected over the years. This is just 3 of the ones I picked for this morning. This is actually a little story about Abraham Maslow, which I thought was very cool. Shortly after the famous psychologist Abraham Maslow suffered a near-fatal heart attack, he wrote in a letter, the confrontation with death and the reprieve from it makes everything look so precious, so sacred, so beautiful that I feel more strongly than ever the impulse to love it, to embrace it, and to let myself be overwhelmed by it. My river has never looked so beautiful. Death and its ever-present possibility makes love, passionate love, more possible. And then the great astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said this: it is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus that I bring to being alive. The urgency of accomplishment, the need to express love now, not later. And then one of my favorite books, The Untethered Soul, Michael A. Singer said this in this book: it is truly a great cosmic paradox that one of the best teachers in all of life turns out to be death. No person or situation could ever teach you as much as death has to teach you. Learn to live as though you are facing death at all times, and you will become bolder and more open. If you live life fully, you won't have any last wishes. If you live life fully, you won't have any last wishes. Why? Because you've lived life fully. So here's what I always say this morning: love calls you. Love calls you to make death your constant companion, because the awareness of death helps heal wounds, it refines your purpose, and you lead a fearless and authentic life. And I find that pretty powerful. And I've thought about all the patients that I've served and what they've taught me. I remember meeting a patient that I called Coach. He was a 95-year-old former Indiana high school basketball coach. His wife, Ruth, was 92. They lived that long together. They were married a long time. And they had a simple life, but they would save money and travel the world. And I would meet them on a Friday around 10 o'clock. I never noticed that until after about a month. It always just seemed to be Friday at 10. So I thought about the book Tuesdays with Maury, and then I called this Fridays with Coach, because the purpose of my meeting there as a chaplain was to help them deal with Coach's decline and to provide some pre-grief anticipatory stuff and hogwash. What was really happening? He and Ruth were teaching me more about love and about living fully and about not having any regrets and about being so tender and kind to the people in your life now, not waiting until the last minute. I learned from them during that time. And when Coach died, he had a good death because he had learned to let go over the years. And he died peacefully, like a sailboat just heading off into a quiet harbor. And it was beautiful. And so I've learned from people like that. I want to share one story I wrote, posted on Facebook. A week ago this morning, upon being notified of the death of a hospice patient, I was asked to share the news to the patient's, I love this, 89-year-old boyfriend. They lived in the same assisted living, 89, boyfriend, girlfriend. It would see them, it was adorable, shuffling each other in their walkers, going down to but they really loved each other. So I was asked to share the news that she just passed away. Sitting across from him, his hand in mine, the tears were flowing down his face. And he wasn't completely surprised by the news, but I still remember it hurt his heart, he said. He then looked up at me and shared how his dog had just passed a few weeks earlier. And I noticed there was an empty crate in the corner of his room. Well, that's where his dog was. And he died a few weeks earlier. He asked if it was okay to cry for his dog as well. And as he held my hand tighter, and now the tears were rolling down my face, I responded, "Oh, absolutely. And I'll cry with you." And in that moment, no other words were needed. And it reminded me of a quote from the great teacher, Henri Nouwen. And he said, "Be present to each other and experience in the depths of life. To care means being where the suffering is. It's a way of living together so the mystery of life is revealed." And I thought that was so powerful. And I thought about, even as a pastor, on my very first death, I always like to ask people in workshops, what was your first death? Was there a time when you actually were there when someone took their last breath? And what was that like for you? And for me, it was a gal named Joni, and I was associate pastor of a church. And I remember being with her at the hospital. I had never been with anyone before that had actually died in front of me. And she took her last breath. And I remember there was almost like this feeling. I didn't say anything, but it was like, wow, wow. And there was a strange beauty to it all. And Beauty, The Invisible Embrace, is a book I recommend you read sometime. One of my favorite authors, John O'Donohue, wrote that book. John passed away at 52 of a brain aneurysm. He had his book of blessings coming out, and he didn't get a chance to promote it. Another lesson that we don't have forever. He had a physical, went with his partner. They were in Paris, France, died in his sleep. But in that book, he has a chapter called The Beauty of Death. And I think about this little quote, I'm trying to recite it from memory because I'm in nursing facilities a lot, that when a person dies in their bed, that bed is no longer a deathbed. That bed now becomes a sacred altar where a spiritual transformation has taken place. So we need to honor that moment. So what I do when I attend to death, I try to teach that lovingly by modeling, and in a few words with aides or such in the facility, say, let's just take a moment. Let's turn that TV off. Let's just acknowledge what took place here, a spiritual transformation. Because I remember one time, it's only happened to me once, assisted living on the north side of Indy. I was with this elderly gentleman. There was a nurse and an aide of the facility there. The three of us were there. We all witnessed it. When he took his last breath, I mean, in a millisecond of time, I saw a vapor trace. Whew. and my mouth fell open. And because I thought maybe I was crazy, I look at the other two and they're looking at me and their mouths dropped open. We all saw the vapor trace. So we know this whole topic of death and dying and afterlife fascinate me. So I won't get off track here. We'll go back to awareness of death. But we know that that spiritual transformation takes place, and it's a very tender time. You know, there's something interesting that happens. I was part of our WFYI PBS affiliate when Bill Moyers did his big, long TV special, I think 7 weeks in a row, on death and dying, on our own terms, I think it was called. Beautiful series. And I would help man the phones when people wanted to get the study guide and things like that. But there was research that showed, psychology research, that people who were pronounced terminal, and they had time to work through the fear, the anger, the sadness, all those natural emotions that are well and good, and we need to embrace them. But after they worked through that and came out on the other side, and they were still terminal, but they could still communicate, something happened. It's like their brain got rewired. And it gave them permission to finally be who they wanted to be, to say what they've always wanted to say, for some to do what they've always wanted to do. It was that knowing of death, oh my God, I don't have forever, that woke them up out of almost a slumber that many of us live like through our lives, just slumbering along. And it made them realize, what do I want to do with my one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver reminds us. And I thought that was powerful. So I started reflecting on last words. I had a guest who had a book called Last Words, and I started reflecting on that. And I came up with these 3 questions. Now, at first I thought I was really cool, and I came up with these 3 questions because I got the download on it. Then I read somewhere, no, Jack Kornfield came up with the 3 questions. Then I read somewhere else, no, he got it from Buddha. So whoever was the author of these 3 questions, they're powerful questions. And these are questions that guide my life. So let's go through those. When I have been with someone who's about to die and they can verbalize, I've never heard anybody, oh my God, in the 20, 30 years of pastor, hospice chaplain, whatever work that I've done, I've never heard anybody ask, do you think I should have built a more expensive home? I never heard one person ask, do you think I should have bought a more expensive truck or a sports car? Not one. Some of the things that a lot of us think about a lot are, that'd be really nice to have, and I need that. But I've always heard them ask at least one, if not all of these 3 questions, maybe each in their own way, but nevertheless 3 questions. Question number 1, did I love well? And so I asked myself a lot, Richard, are you loving well today? Did I love well? They start realizing that love really is what it's all about. And they start examining past relationships in their mind, maybe friends they haven't seen, maybe family members they haven't seen, maybe a brother or sister that they haven't talked to in years because of a squabble they had. All of a sudden, they're taking score of how they've loved. And it reminded me of a time many, many years ago when my 40-year-old son was a baby. He doesn't remember this. I think that's a hoot. I do. He doesn't remember because he was a baby and I was in seminary and he was sick. And the docs didn't really know what was going on. They took some tests. You bring him back tomorrow. Oh, okay. So his mom and I brought him back home. Middle of the night, it's my time to be with him. We rented an apartment at the time with a radiator heater. I remember that. I don't think you can find those anymore in homes or apartments. And there was a night light, and I didn't know what to do. He was my first of my children. So I held him in my arm. I got in the rocking chair, and I just started rocking him back and forth, back and forth. And out of helplessness, I just started singing to him, probably some song, child song I learned at a camp. And as I was doing that, he fell asleep in my arms. I remember about 5 years ago, we were having lunch and I said, Jake, do you remember? And he started laughing. Of course, then I realized, of course he doesn't remember. He was a baby. Fast forward, there's a patient I served about 1.5 years ago at a facility. Long story short, I get called, spent a lot of time with her months. I get called, she's now active. She's taking her last breath. Richard, can you go attend the death and pending death? I said, absolutely. So I go there, brother and sister on either side. and they're grieving appropriately, tears, it's okay to go, Mom, those kind of things. They quietly take a seat. I'm holding space for everybody at the end of the bed. I feel led to walk up next to her very closely so she can hear me, and I lean into her ear. And the verse that came to me was a verse that came to me when I was holding my son. And it's a verse out of Zephaniah. Those who teach the Bible never teach on this book. It's an old, short Old Testament chapter. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17, it says this: God is in your midst, and he's singing over you with joy and quieting you with his love. So I started stroking her hair and started leaning in and whispering this into her ear very gently and slowly. God, let's call her Barbara. Barbara, God is in your midst, and he's singing over you with joy and quieting you with his love. I just started repeating that slowly and developed a cadence. And then I got a second download. This time it was Bob Marley, and every little thing's going to be all right. So I'm mixing Zephaniah and Barb. That's how I roll as a chaplain. I was mixing, but I started doing that. And after about 2 minutes, no joke, this was one of the most peaceful deaths I've ever attended. I started doing that. I noticed there was a cadence. The two things would end there, and I'd start top of her head. And after about 2 minutes, her breath was getting shallower and shallower and shallower. And then when I finally said that Zephaniah verse, and I said, and everything's going to be all right, and I went down like that, she took her last breath and she left. It was so beautiful because God was in her midst, and God was singing over her with joy. He's in our midst now, or source, or whatever the universe is for you. I teach a lot to Unitarians, so I'm learned to be pretty broad too. And quieting us with love, with that beautiful divine love. But that was a beautiful thing. And so I learned one of the questions is, am I loving well? We can ask that every day. The second question that I learned these people would always ask is, man, did I live fully? I mean, I've had people younger than me, thought they had forever. I think unconsciously, we kind of think that way. We live that way, we act that way. But the beautiful thing about meditating on our death, as the Buddhists teach, it does remind us of our mortality, and it does help us live more fully and love more deeply. As a matter of fact, I read a New York Times article last Sunday. I don't know if you ever catch a New York Times. I kind of graze it online. They did a wonderful article on a Catholic nun. She's a young nun. But long story short, she got fascinated by a priest. She was agnostic, and then she had a radical conversion, then she became Catholic, became a nun. But he had a skull on his desk, as oftentimes the Buddhist teachers would have. And he had the skull to remind him of death. And so she picked up a Latin phrase called memento mori, mentum mori. And it's a Latin phrase that's been around forever. Shakespeare even used it. But what it means is remember your death. So now you can find things like, I have a coin that I purchased with it, memento mori, remember your death, that I carry in my pocket now. So the Catholics have a worldwide movement now about death remembrance, death awareness. I thought the Buddhists had a camp on that, but no, it's beginning to go out because people realize this life is fragile. I think through COVID, my future son-in-law, his mom died because of COVID last year. There's a lot of people who've passed away because of that, the tragedy of that. And as we get older, as I said earlier, I had a lot of friends younger than me who's passed away. So we see how fragile and how precious life is. So the more we can embrace that, make it our companion, the better it is. So we start asking that question, am I living fully? Was there a dream I was going to go after and I just got so busy with work, I just never had the time to do it? So it's important for you and I to ask these questions because we're all alive, we're here on Zoom. Are there dreams unfulfilled? Are there things that we still wanted to do? Are there places we wanted to travel, but yeah, I don't want to spend the money on that? Well, maybe you should. We don't have forever. I can guarantee you, if I looked at the Indy Star this morning online and then look at it later tonight, there will be people tonight that will die today in a car wreck, tragically maybe a shooting, probably a death in a hospital. They got up, they thought they had forever. Again, none of this is morbid for me. It's totally changed my life. I start showing up now, present with everybody I meet because I'm getting it. It dropped from my head, knowledge, into my heart, illumination. And with any teaching, you all are unity. You know that. You want it to drop from your head into your heart, where you finally get it and it's a core part of you. And then the last question, which is the hardest of all, when I do workshops and we do longer time with each of these questions, everyone will tell me, yeah, this is the hardest question of all. Did I love well? Did I live fully? Did I learn to let go? Or am I still holding on to he did, she did me wrong 10 years ago? Did I learn to let go and walk lightly on the earth? And so we realize how fragile and how precious life is. I wrote something else on Facebook. My years of service as a hospice chaplain has reminded me that life and death are part of the same coin. Death is my partner, a constant companion that serves as a wake-up call. Pay attention, it whispers. This is your life. How shall you live it? Death is whispering that to you today, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. The sooner we invite it out of the closet and embrace it, and there's wonderful things like death cafes and so many other things now that are getting people to talk about this just as natural as they talk about sports or the weather, because it's something that we find that will really improve our lives. So I want to close with something, trying to stay on track with time here, with a true story. And I'll have to shorten the story to do this beautiful reading. But it was June 16th, year 2000. Every year on June 16th, I call it my Celebrate Life Day. And I try to do something special that day. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose, but usually includes beating on my African drum, always reading what I'm going to read to you to close with. And, you know, I got to be honest, a couple times I'll get a cigar and go out to the woods and smoke a cigar, do that, or have a glass of wine with it. But it's Celebrate Life Day. On that day, it was raining. I had just pretty much started hospice work back then. I'd been doing it maybe a couple years. I was in a town called Franklin, south of Indianapolis. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm coming up I-65, and it wasn't a torrential downpour, just a downpour. And I'm on the interstate, and I had a mini SUV, and all of a sudden, my car hydroplaned. I've never experienced that since. You never want to experience that. And I do 360-degree circles going 60, 65 miles an hour on I-65 heading north. Each time my car turns south, all of this, of course, in a few seconds of time, I see a semi-truck getting closer and 2 or 3 cars on the other lane. Third time I turn around, I don't remember if I verbally said it or in my head, I said, this is it. I literally took my hands off the steering wheel. No joke. This is the closest to a miracle I've ever experienced in my life. A lot of people I know have stories. I don't have that many stories. I have this story. Next thing I know, my car is off on the side of the road, engine off, facing north. I'm hearing a truck brakes from cars and trucks. The trucks couldn't brake. It just kept going on down the highway. There were 2 cars that braked behind me. Windshield wipers, I remember that. I remember the rain hitting the roof of the car, and I'm hyperventilating. After a few minutes, I try to get my breath. I roll the window down, hit the button. I kind of go like this, like the other cars know I'm okay. And I drive 30 miles an hour off the highway to the Greenwood ramp and go to where I was living. I had just gone through a divorce at the time, but I wasn't far from my kids. So went to my apartment and I broke down. And long story short, I got angry because I came so close to death. I took my hands off the steering wheel. You mean, God, I'm going to have to do this again one day? Why didn't you take me now? And I'm learning all this stuff about death awareness, but I'm a baby at the time, and I'm sitting on the floor, and I started saying, what are you to learn from this, Richard? What are you to learn? And the first thing that came to me was, it's still raining outside. When I was a little boy growing up in Springfield, Illinois, I used to love to walk in the rain. My mom would have to yell and drag me in because I just love the rain. Richard, when was the last time you walked in the rain? And I said, it's been never. So I got up. Valley Vista Golf Course is behind where I'm living. It's dark, it's raining, and I keep my clothes on and I'm walking in the rain. And by the time I'm done, after about 35 minutes, I have a Shawshank Redemption thing. This was before Shawshank Redemption. My arms are outstretched. I'm feeling every drop. I go in, and all of a sudden, I'm saying, what now? What now? And I take a hot shower, and I'm taking a hot shower and enjoying a hot shower. And I'm starting to get this sense of, wow, I'm just being present with every drop of water, the rain, the shower. And I come out of my shower. Now, because I moved into this place, I had a counselor friend as kind of a gag gift, but she knew I loved Donna Summer, got me the Best of Donna Summer CD. So I put on the Best of Summer, Donna Summer TV. I started dancing naked in my apartment. I think I can say that on Zoom. If not, please forgive me. But I'm dancing naked to this song because I'm celebrating life. I sit down on the floor. I say, I feel like I should have a communion. And then I remembered a half-eaten, like this gourmet cookie I bought at a Marsh grocery store, and I had a half bottle of Merlot wine. I sat down, and my communion was a little bit of wine, chocolate chip cookie. I'm having that, and I'm saying, and I look over, and back that day, I collected books like an alcoholic. I mean, I was a pastor. I used to be a pastor. And there was one book that literally glowed off the shelf. One of those experiences, right? We've heard of that before. I picked the book up. I just purchased it, hadn't really read it before, and I probably should have had the book in with me, but here's the copy of the page. I opened it up, 4 chapters in this book. It's a book by Wayne Muller, How Then Shall I Live? One of my all-time favorite books to read, that and the 4 Agreements. And so I opened it up, and I hit the 3rd chapter. How then shall we live knowing we will die? And I had a chill down my spine because of what has transpired that day. In the page I turned to, I'm going to close because I'm probably exceeding my time. But here's what I turned to, no joke. And I carry this with me always, but this is part of my celebration of Life Day on June 16th. I read this to myself. Sometimes I'll invite some friends to join me and we'll read it together. But here's what I read after experiencing all of that. With so little time left, there is none to waste. Suddenly, childhood trauma seems less compelling. Money seems useful for daily needs, but greed seems silly. What can we really keep? Unproductive relationships are let go. Intricate career maneuvering seem wasteful, even comical. For those close to death, it becomes instantly clear that everything they do in their remaining days is precious. Every conversation, every action, every choice is pregnant with meaning and value. Only those relationships that are fruitful and loving are kept. The rest are allowed to fall away. Every act is a sacrament. Every breath a gift. Nothing is taken for granted. Nothing wasted. What kind of life will we have? A human birth is a breathtaking gift. This singular life is a pearl of great price. How will we use this precious time? Sloppily careening from one day to the next, getting things done, checking off lists, buttressing our lives against trouble as best we can until we die weary and wondering whether we were ever awake, ever truly alive at all? Or shall we live not by accident, but on purpose, naming clearly and courageously those things we cherish, creating a life of beauty and love? Will we walk on the earth gently? Will we care for our children with understanding and wisdom? Will we seek our beauty and give thanks for it? Will we be generous with our talents for the good of all? Will we be patient and thoughtful with others? Will we be courageous in speaking what we know to be true? Will we be awake and alive? Will we leave a legacy of kindness, knowing we will die? How shall we live? So I say, love calls you to make death your constant companion, because the awareness of death helps you heal wounds, refine your purpose, and lead a fearless and authentic life. Amen.
Thank you so much, Richard. Now is the time in our service when we have the opportunity to give thanks for all the abundance in our lives. As we are prosperous, so we shall affirm that are for others' lives as well. If you like, take your love offering and hold it over your heart. Let us affirm together our unity blessing on these gifts. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. We are blessed with rich abundance in countless ways, both seen and unseen. God, you are the source of our unlimited good. For these abundant gifts, we thank you. We bless each name and prayer in our prayer box, knowing our prayers are answered and made manifest in our lives right now. We include prayers for our families, friends, co-workers, church community, military personnel, all world leaders, and any other circumstance we are holding in our hearts. Remember, there are many ways to be generous and to share your abundance with Unity of Grand Rapids. The e-giving and PayPal options can be found on our website at unityofgrandrapids.org. If you would like to mail a check, please make sure it's mailed to our P.O. box, which is listed on the screen. Thank you. Announcements. 2 Sundays from now, we will be live at Unity of Grand Rapids parking lot on June 6th at 10:30 a.m. We are asking for a few willing helpers to do a setup and teardown after the service. Please get with Chuck Pearson, Katie Chapman, or Sarah Eddington to volunteer. Any other announcements, Katie, or are we good?
I do have one. So, Richard, thank you. I cannot wait till the end to say it. That was amazing. Wonderful. So inspirational and filled with wisdom. Okay. Anyway, I have a couple of interesting items to share. A few years ago, a school approached Unity in Ada and offered to buy their building. So the bid was around $400,000. Ada wasn't in the market to sell and they weren't interested. However, the school has come back and is making ever increasing offers to Unity Ada to buy their building. So the bid stands right now at $800,000, and Ada is taking a look at that. And so in the meantime, they reached out to our church to discuss again joining the two churches together to pool our resources, time, talent, treasure. The timing just seemed to mesh there. And so Chuck Pearson, who is out of town today or would be here, has met with Mike Roque a couple times. And as there's always been interest really in sharing those resources, the next step would be for the two boards to get together for further discussion on the issue. And meanwhile, Ada did take a look around right when they received the offer to see what might be available in the city should they decide to sell, and they found a property in Cascade that was a church. Some of you may know it because Mark Caney did play there for a while. I think it was called New Day Church on the Hill, maybe. So they're taking a look at that, considering all options that are, coming their way, considering the option of meeting with us at Walker's site if they should choose to sell. Considering maybe even staying where they are and looking still at becoming one unit and then finding something new. There's so many options. Just wanted to let you all know that that has come to light. Discussions beginning to happen on it. Would love to hear feedback, your ideas and thoughts, and we will have our own town hall meeting. They're having one today at Ada, so they're going to be discussing some of this information. But we'll have one on June 6th when we're in the parking lot. So after service, we'll have some time for discussion and questions. So that's what I had for today. Thanks, everyone.
At this time, we offer our unity blessing, which says, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ in you. Let's join together in reciting our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. We are light. The love of God enfolds us. We are love. The power of God protects us. We are power. The presence of God watches over us. We are presence. Wherever we are, God is. We are divine, and all is well. Let's join together to close the service today and sing our peace song.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
welcome to stay after for a breakout session and some fellowship time.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, enjoy
Thank you,
your.
Richard.
Thank you.
All right. I have